Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the 40th edition of Guru Manthan. I'm very happy to share that we are now completing the 40th episode of this series of discussions with educationists and thinkers. Uh, Guru Manthan is being hosted by the Vivekananda Institute for Leadership Development, an initiative of SUIM. WeLead's mission is to develop human and social capital towards building a resurgent India with a focus on enhancing the potential of individuals and institutions. We lead engages with four sectors: government, NGOs, corporates, and the community. Guru Manthan, starting in August, it was initiated to be a platform for teachers to share, discuss, debate, and learn about diverse perspectives and practices in the space of education from across the world. And every week we have had very interesting topics being discussed here, debated. Again, today we have with us Kollega Shri Kollegal Sharma. Sharma sir, as many of us fondly know him. He's a retired chief scientist from CFTRI. He founded a podcast by name Jana Shuddhi, which has been running for 4 years. A 10 to 15 minute news capsule that was sent as an audio file every single day for the last 4 years. And that has become should I say, just as many people listen to news in the morning or watch or read a newspaper, people listen to Jana Shuddhi every day now. He is also spearheading a program called Kutuhali, which is a science popularization and communication initiative in the state of Karnataka in Kannada medium. So it's a joint initiative of Vigyan Prasar, Karnataka Science and Technology Academy. So it's our privilege to have you here, sir, in Guru Manthan and to share your ideas. Like always, we will stick to the template of 20 to 25 minutes of a talk from you, and then we will have a moderated Q&A session for about 30 minutes, ending with your closing remarks. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Praveen. And that was very nice of you to introduce me with such glowing terms. So, one of the problems is that I have always worked in Canada. So, to give a talk about what I do in Canada is a bit difficult. In any case, let me try. And what I will be doing today is basically uh, will be looking at how communication helps.
Sharma sir, you might want to switch off and switch on your video once again.
Okay, video is not coming.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll do that. Are you getting it?
Not
It's not.
yet.
No.
Not yet. Yeah.
Okay, probably it is.
Yes.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
is
Now you're
visible, sir.
There is a 1 second. The sharing is not happening, so I will have to stop this and do it again. Please excuse me because usually what happens is that the engagement is always a issue, and
Do you want me
okay.
to? Yeah, it's
Now,
visible.
am I on full? Okay.
Yeah.
Now, let me just start with this. So I would like to say that communication plays a very important role in learning. It's not just in learning. When I say that I'm a science communicator, people usually think that I simply copy something, write it in a different way, and do it. But that is not the only issue. Uh, the communication is an essential part of each one of us. Whether it is outside the classroom or inside the classroom, communication becomes very essential. What I'll be doing today is to correlate the essentials of communication with the classroom practices so that we understand whether the communication as we communication specialists practice will be useful in a classroom or not. So essentially, communication is a process where generally we pass on some information to some other one. Okay, so it's a process where information is passed, or you can also say knowledge is passed, because knowledge is a information internalized, information collected, processed and internalized. So therefore, when you pass on some knowledge to someone, and there also communication happens. And when we talk about learning, it's again another process where information again becomes very important. Okay, and in learning again we do information we gather and then internalize. So what I see is that there is a sort of similarity between the communication and the learning process. And since the learning happens in a classroom, I'm talking about the school process, it is very important that we understand the processes of communication and the principles of communication and some simple techniques of what we can do in a classroom. And what is it that when we say learning, what is the purpose of learning? I would consider two reasons for learning. One is the understanding of the world. Look, it is very innate in every animal, including the human. And look at this puppy. What it does is just exploring around to try to understand its environment. And that is the main purpose of this. And this is also an essential learning that happens, that most of us do. uh, and it is instinctively we start doing it. But there is another one, another purpose of learning, and that is where this happens. This is the play, or we call it as a play, but it is for the animals, it is a learning process, learning to get the life skills. And that's the most important thing. So whatever learning we do, whether it is through a reading or writing or discussions or teaching in a classroom, the essentially we are trying to do these two processes. One is understanding the world around us, and then through that try to get life skills that we may need in future. And if that is the case of we need a guru when we want to learn life skill. For exploration, it is not always necessary that you need a guru, but when you want life skills, you need a guru because the guru has already experienced some of that. And therefore, there are two people, at least two people, in a learning process, in a teaching process, when we learn the life skills. And what we talk about in a teaching environment or a class environment or anywhere where the life skills are taught, I believe that there is a communication happening, and the communication is because there are two people, and the information has to pass from one person to another one. How does this happen? And it reminds me of the famous Sarvagya Vachana, Kelavam Ballavarinda Kaltu, Kelavaram Malpavarinda Kaltu, Kelavam uh, Keli Hige. So, what it means is that you learn something by watching, you learn something by being taught, you learn something on your own, and you learn something also by reading and other things. So, the learning happens in various ways. So we get the information and internalize the information through various means. But when it happens with between when the guru is there or a teacher is there, then we call it as a communication. Communication requires at least two people.
Sir, one request. Can you be a bit louder?
I can be.
Or you might want to move closer to the microphone.
Okay, I'll move the mic closer to me.
Yeah.
Okay. So is it okay now? Audible? Okay, fine. So communication doesn't happen in a vacuum. It happens between two people, and the two people are usually we call them as a sender and a target. In a classroom, I said at least two people. It can be many more also. The target can be many more, but if the sender is many more, it is a noise. you cannot have a sort of a communication when there are 10 people talking and then 10 people listening. That will be only chaos. So communication happens only when there is one sender and at least one target receiver. This is most important. So that is one of the reasons why in a classroom, when there is,
You still have to be a bit louder. Lots of messages.
okay, my the problem is with the net. I think there is a little slow happening. And the second thing that I find is that I cannot speak loud. I have my
Yeah,
old problem.
yeah, I know. So sorry to
So
trouble you, but
that's okay, no problem. Now, is it louder?
yeah, what I would suggest is if you can speak a bit slowly, but maybe try to be a
Okay,
bit louder. Yeah,
I'll be a little bit slow.
yeah.
So communication doesn't happen in a vacuum. That is what people say. And what do they mean? They mean that for communication to happen properly, there must be at least a sender and an audience. Okay, the audience have to be at least minimum one. If there is no audience, then there is no communication. And yes, these days when we go around, we see a lot of people with the headset on their phone and loudly speaking and walking around. And usually, it is very embarrassing to see these people. We feel that they are speaking to themselves, which is not good. Okay, that's normally the reaction that we have. But then the tools have made us such a way that the person who is working, he is also communicating with someone else, and he is using something what we call as a medium. And the medium becomes very, very important in a communication, because it can set the setting for a communication to happen. And what do we mean by medium? Right now, for me, the medium is both the tool that I am using, the language that I am using, and of course, the way that I am speaking. All these form a sort of a communication signals passing on the message. And when Praveen says, "Sir, we can't hear you," you will see that I am a little embarrassed. And I may not say it, but immediately I feel you will all be noticing that yes, there is a twitch in my eye, or there is a shake in my head, and that is communicating some information to you, and you all understand that. I don't have to explain. So there is always a medium or a language and a tool to communicate between other with other people. We usually talk about the medium as either the text medium, audio medium, or graphic medium. And whether you use a telephone, whether you use a television, whether you use an internet or anything, generally we use these three basic medium of communication: the text, the sound, and the graphics. And that is where most of the communication happens. For a successful communication to happen, when do we say that the communication is complete or success? When the receiver perceives or understands or comprehends the message the way the sender has assumed him to understand. That means if a person wants to say that, okay, this is a tree, he may say this is a tree. And what the other person comprehends may be a tree. If that happens, that is 100% perfect. And that is what the every communication expert would like to see happening. But unfortunately, that doesn't happen. What happens mostly is that, yes, I might be meaning a tree, and the tree that is assumed by the other person could be a fir tree. Okay, so the communication again here, though we have communicated that it is a tree, it is not perfect. And there is still a gap, a problem here. And that is one of the reasons, one of the main things that happens in a classroom. Communication is plays a very important role in the classroom, because you can see this. This is something from a book that I have picked up. Beautiful. So you see the orbit of a planet is elliptical, and all the three students have three questions. So there is a question on what is an orbit, what's a planet, and what is elliptical. It's not just the understanding of the word. Now, what is happening in this picture is that the teacher has an experience which he is trying to share with all the other three people. But each of those people have a different experience. Experience in the sense, a different comprehensive or competency, we can say. The competency is what we talk about in our classrooms. So they have a different competency. The competency here is in terms of their vocabulary, understanding of the words. And this is what happens. If the competency level is not up to the guru's competency level, then the communication fails. So then what do we need to do in this case? In this case, as a if he wants to because the main purpose here is not for the other people to understand what he is saying, and it is always his goal to reach out information to the others. So it is his responsibility. Whose responsibility? The sender's responsibility, to see that the communication is packaged in such a way that most of the message reaches the people. I am saying very clearly, most of the message, because we cannot at any time pass on all the 100% information that we have, or all the 100% understanding that we have of a subject. That is very, very difficult. And especially depending upon the medium, or depending upon the way you plan your communication strategy, things will be different. So in a classroom, we have heard of all these 5 E's. So Praveen will be thinking about this, and Harsha will be laughing there. There may be one mistake somewhere, and he will be saying that, okay, engage, explore, educate, explain, evaluate, everything is there. I usually say that in a classroom, this is very important. And if you look at the picture here, beautiful picture, wonderfully shot. And as a photograph, it is a beautiful picture, but as a representation of a classroom, it is very real, in the sense you can see that there is no engagement. The engagement, even with the camera person, is not there. So the last row people are looking at they have their own ways of or their own discussions, and the front row people are looking at the camera, and probably it is shot by someone else, not by the teacher. So therefore the teacher is nowhere. Okay. So in the classroom, we talk about engage, explore, educate, explain, and evaluate as a process of teaching. And its corollary is learning. So when you teach, somebody learns. So therefore, there is something that's happening between. But then how do we know that he has learned? The target has learned, or the student has learned. And that is the evaluation process. Okay. But even there, in every one of these processes, communication plays very, very important role. When we say engagement, how do we engage people? What do we mean by engagement? What are the tools that we use to engage people? Very important is this. And generally, the engagement in, when I was a child, the engagement used to be one danda in a hand, and the teacher would come and then beat it on the table, and then that would be the engagement. But today, the things have changed. That is not an engagement. So the engagement has to be different. Now, when we say engagement in a classroom, or when we have a mass communication exercise, as in the case of, suppose we write an article for a newspaper, or we speak on a television, or we are speaking on a radio, it's a mass communication. In the mass communication, there is another rule that we usually play. That is, you have to take the lowest minimum standard as the comprehension capacity of your audience, or the competence of the audience. That means you have to speak in a language that most people speak. Most people, you can also change a little bit, but most people speak. Now, if I'm speaking the language of educators here, probably most people will understand. But if I speak the language of a communicator here, again, it will be difficult. And this is one of the main hurdles of communication, is the language. And engagement is possible if you can speak in the language of the audience. Let me just give you an example. I think probably Melli was there when I took this class in Bhimatkere. And the wonderful thing, and Praveen will remember this, uh, the first thing we were to discuss about brain. Okay, and the entire text was there. Everybody had their textbook in the front, like the children have here. And I spoke to them about, do you know where the brain is? Blank stares. Okay, the next question I asked, okay, what is brain called? No question. Midulu, do you understand what is Midulu? No. Do you understand what is Mastishka? Mastishka was the word given, a technical word given in the textbook. No. So then I had to stop. I had to engage. So then I said, I left everything. I talked something else. What did you eat and all these things? And how many of you eat meat? So then because it was a tribal school, a lot of people started talking about, yes, this meat, that meat and all. Finally, I asked, how many of you have tasted what we call as head meat? That is, I'm translating from Kannada, that is called as tale mamsa. So generally, the local people call brain as a tale mamsa. So they do not have a specific technical term for that. And the moment I said this, 99 people in the class, so that was the class number, and almost the same as today's audience. And everyone was jumping, everyone was attentive. That was the thing. So what happened there? I didn't do anything. I just spoke a language that is familiar to them. And that is what, brings people closer. Okay. And second, verbal and non-verbal communication. These are very important. And when we say verbal, the language becomes very, very important. The moment we take a science textbook and start talking about whatever is there in the science textbook, it puts off a lot of children, mainly because the language of the text is very, very far away from their routine experience. So unless we speak to them in the language that they understand and then bring these information to them, that will be much more important. Then when we start exploring, it again becomes a communication exercise. How do we explore? Here, exploration is to understand what the student has learned before the present class. Okay, what is his previous experience, how much of comprehension he has, because the teacher has to build over and above that. And which means it is not necessary, it is very much essential that the teacher ask questions to students. At the same time, the students have to answer the questions in a way that the teacher understands. This is important because it is a sort of an exchange in a classroom, especially during exploration and in the evaluation procedures. And most of the time, what happens is that the communication happens only one way. They say the other way, the communication may not happen. And for several reasons, and that could be also one of the reasons could be the cultural practices. The other reason could be the language deficiency. A third could be the comprehension might not have been there, or the fourth could be an overbearing personality of the teacher. So all these things will be very important when we talk about engage, explore, and evaluate. I would say for educate, when you teach, the communication ability of the teacher is the only one that is most important. And explain, again, the communication ability of the teacher is very important. But what we forget is that the communication ability of students affects our teaching process, affects the learning of both the teacher as well as the student. And this is one of the things that I would like to stress today, that it is not essential that the teacher to be communicative. It is also essential that the skills be taught to children to communicate back what they have learned or what they have not learned. And that is possible when we give them an opportunity to speak out their mind or to communicate in whichever way that is possible. Okay. Now, let me just ask any of you here, what is this? The teacher is asking the question. What could be the answer? Is the answer to the question always the same? If not, why is it not the same? We will come to that later, but then please brood over that. And if you can chat your answers in the chat box. The factors, there are many factors that affect the communication. Some of them I have already subtly told, but most important of these are these: the competence of the receiver and the sender. When I say the competence of the receiver and the sender, if I am speaking about a subject, I must know not only the core of the subject, but also a little bit beyond the subject, so that I can always expand over that. Let me just give one example of this. There was a English teacher in the nursery class, so in the primary class, and she was teaching about the pronouns, nouns, and various other things. And when we asked her to pick out a pronoun from a storybook, she was not able to do it. And that is very, very important for a teacher as well as a student. So what happens is that a teacher also should have a competence. If the competence is there, he can communicate the ideas there. So if a teacher has this deficiency, then what happens is that he will only, or he or she will only communicate only what she knows, to that extent only, which may not be sufficient for the students to understand. That's one. Second one is the other way around is also there. The students also should know about this. Now, when we say how, suppose I give an example of pizza in maybe Hosalli. Okay, gobi manchuri probably they will be knowing because Sarguru has gobi manchuri and all this thing. But suppose I say pizza, they will not be able to understand. Mainly because they have not experienced that particular aspect of life. And to such people, in such a circumstance, how do we go about? Then we need to actually understand first what is their comprehensive abilities and then do this. In a classroom, normally what we need to do is, or what we do is, we draw a normal, an average person's comprehensive ability, and then start teaching from that level. And suppose if we want to have a communication complete, then we will also have to engage the persons below the normal, and maybe sometimes also above the normal, but below the normal generally. So that is very important. The same information can be understood by different people in different ways. I get this in Jana Suddhi because Jana Suddhi cannot give examples other than audio examples. So a lot of comprehension problems will be there. And that is one of the shortcomings of the medium. But then it also gives a lot of scope for them to discuss and communicate with me. And that is another plus point. Then environment is very important. Classroom environment, it should be trustworthy. The trust between the sender of information and the trust and the receiver must be there. You will have heard a lot of these comments from nursery school teachers. Illama nam teacher helirode hige, so nan hige kaliyodu. Why? Because for that context they have a lot of trust in the teacher rather than their parents. This is one of the problems, or one of the things that we need to, as teachers, we need to understand, as communicators, we need to understand. Building trust with the audience is most important. And how do we do that is, there are many various techniques. You can do a lot of things, but the best thing is to be one among them is the best way that one can do. Okay, normally what we think is that when I go to a classroom, I must have a very formal dress and all, and then only people will start looking at me, and then talking to me and all. So this is generally some of the and this happens at a higher level, especially in higher education. Fortunately, it doesn't happen at the lower education things, but that is not the engagement practice that we have, and that is one of the things. Then medium, I have already told, language, text, pictures, and sound. These have to be as simple as possible. So when we speak also, if I take, I have done this exercise, I think in Shomaga or this one, there were 400 teachers, and I read out a sentence from ninth standard textbook, Kannada textbook, ninth standard science Kannada medium textbook, and asked one of the teachers to actually enact what was there in that textbook. It was not possible. And the whole thing was very simple. Whole thing was throw a ball. That's the simplest thing. How does a thrower in a or a striker in a throw ball match throws the ball? So that was explained in such a way that it was not possible for him to repeat. That means the communication fails. Communication fails. So how do we do this is another important thing that we need. And then emotions affect these things. If the teacher is angry, he will not be able to communicate properly. This is very, very, very important. If a teacher is angry, if a teacher is sad, if a teacher is upset, all these will affect the communication in a classroom. If I am upset, it has happened many times, because in my professional career, I had to be speaking to a lot of public visitors to my institute, and my job was to explain to them what my colleagues were doing in the institute. So it would be very interesting to note that sometimes my English would be extremely good, very communicative, very good, but sometimes I would search for words and stumble and all these things. Many times I have thought, why is it happening? Then I noticed that these things happen at two times. One, when I am not willing to take the assignment at that moment and it becomes as a pressure, then yes, my communication ability suffers. The second thing that happened was when the audience was not responding. The audience has to respond. So my engagement was not complete. So again, the problem was there. So my language, my communication ability suffered. Same thing happened with Kannada also. Kannada, it's not that the language matters. What matters is that your emotions, the climate in which you communicate becomes very, very important. Last is the setting, the context. What do you mean by context? Context is, if I want to talk about gravity, can I talk about that in a primary classroom to a nursery child? And in that case, if it is very much essential, what should I be using as a communication mode? How should I be talking to that? Will it be the same that I use in a 8th standard classroom? It may not be the same. And this is one of the reasons why the context becomes very, very, very important. And now let's look at this again. What could be the answers in an art class? And people can say that it is a moon or a bangle. And in a maths class, it could mean zero, circle, or a toroid. In a science class, it can be an annular eclipse or anything. And so the same question, the same information is comprehended in different settings in different way. If it is a general classroom, if it's only a classroom of or a girl's classroom, immediately the answer will be a ring. Okay. And if it is a boys' classroom, it could be a wheel. So the settings will change. And therefore, this is an understanding that we need to keep in mind when we talk about certain things. How do we present in what setting? That's very, very important. Lastly, In a classroom, when we start communicating, there are some principles. Like you have 5 E's, the communication also has some principles, and that is the thing. Communication is not static. It is dynamic in the sense it keeps changing. You cannot use the same technique, same lecture, same type of analogies in every class. That's not possible. Probably Praveen will say, sir, ನೀವು innovation classes ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀರಲ್ಲ, 50 class ಮಾಡಿದ್ದೀರಾ, same slides you use ಅಂತ he will be commenting. Well, that is true. But then depending upon the audience, I need to change. I need to engage them in a different way. And I need to communicate. The idea is the same. The information is the same. There is nothing that I change. The textbook is the same. The curriculum is the same. The concept is the same. But what changes is the audience. Audience means 8th standard students on Monday may be different from 8th standard students on Tuesday, may be different on 8th standard students after a PT period. So these kind of context we need to understand. Then verbal and non-verbal. Again, these are certain things very important. We usually focus on verbal teaching, but unconsciously we will also be teaching through our non-verbal communication modes. The way we speak, the way we stand, the way we look at the children, the way we use our hands, everything is important. And maybe we will have to deliberately look at these aspects. Then transactional. When we teach, please understand that we are also being evaluated by the students. So the way we communicate, they will also be evaluating. Similarly, they will also be communicating to us when we are teaching in a class or when we are communicating in a group. The communication, if we don't get that communication properly and we don't understand, then it happens like I failed in my English speaking. And this happened because I was not able to gauge the audience. uh, Sorry, the dogs are communicating somewhere. So uh, probably someone who is not familiar to them has come there, and that is their way of okay. So it is transactional. The communication cannot be one way. It has to be two ways if it has to succeed. It is mutually influencing, which means if I communicate well, I will also get some feedback from the students, which actually helps me to understand better. That is very, very important. And the contextual I have already explained to you. So these are the principles that we have. So now, one of the things that I wanted to stress is, can we use non-verbal communication deliberately when we use all E's: engage, educate, elaborate, or explain, or whatever it is. There's one E that I have missed, and I always tell: entertain. Okay, if the classroom is not entertaining, it is not a classroom. So that E is missing. Maybe probably we need to add that sometime there. Now, nonverbal communications are very important, and we use this unconsciously many times. For example, if you want to repeat some certain things, and we do use our hands or our eyes, or we use the modulations of our voice to give a message that we are repeating this. When we say, please go out, and we will also be at the same time showing a hand, go out. Does he not know there is only one door and everybody knows that the exit is there? Then why are we saying that? It is a non-verbal stress that we are giving to the verbal command. Similarly, we may be highlighting certain things or stressing on certain things, the way I did just now. We may be highlighting certain things when I use my hands. Okay, and that gives some importance that, okay, we need to look at this and give a little more concentration or a little more attention to this. Substitute. We don't have to say lots of things. We can just substitute those things. One of the things in engagement especially is, you don't have to say that, okay, I love you or I like you or anything. All that you need is, in a classroom, if a child is naughty, all that I do is either I stare at him or smile at him. he will understand, yes. So whatever he is doing, I have noticed, and it's the message is communicated. Don't have to say anything. The other technique sometimes I use, I'm not a teacher in a classroom, regular classroom, but whenever I interact with students or others, this is what I do, because even in a workshop, even adults have all these habits. Okay, so they will not be having attention, and I will have to do all the E's. And one of the things that I do is go stand near a child. That gives a lot of message depending upon the context. How you do what you do is, you don't have to do anything. The second thing is, okay, a child is very naughty and you want to befriend him. What do we do? Just pat him. You don't have to say anything. Go near him, pat him on this one. That's fine. But be careful. Cultural experiences many times may hinder this communication. So what I do with a boy, I may not be able to do with a girl. These aspects also we need to keep in mind. But at least if we know that yes, non-verbal communication is one of the aids in a classroom in engaging in communicating and all, we should be able to do that. Then compliment, contradict. So if somebody says a wrong answer, you can just say this and it is there. So they know that they are wrong. Nobody else will understand that. And if you say you are wrong and point it out, so it creates a sort of a difficult environment or climate for that particular student. And probably the next half an hour of the class, he may not be attentive. So this is another way of doing compliment. Yeah, you can always compliment. Oh, you just simply, open your eyes and give a big smile. That's enough. A lot of things will happen. And then regulate, of course, disciplining non-verbally is most of the things that teachers do. I have used these kind of things in the classroom. If I have a chalk, the chalk piece can be a very good tool for both engaging as well as regulating. It depends upon how I throw the chalk piece at a person. That shows whether it is I throw it as a compliment or as how to regulate. Now, these are all simple things that we all do in the classroom, but then how do we do? Lastly, science communication. What do science teach us? I am very biased towards science. And so therefore, if we talk about the communication skills that we need to develop, and what do they mean by science communication skills? What constitutes science communication skills? It is something that every teacher has to do everywhere. So it's not just limited to science, but here is the thing. One is information retrieval. So you should be able to get the right information from the right source. That's most important. And how do we do? A lot of things are there. You can talk to a scientist, you can get from an electronic database. Google is there, library, but Google is not always very communicative. So he may mislead also. So therefore, or he or she. So Google may be misleading. So therefore, you will have to always look at the reliability of the source. Then reading. Reading in the sense, whatever information you get, internalizing that. And that is very important. That's another skill. The third thing is, and when we read something, one of the important things that we need to understand is the language. So we need to understand the language, build up a vocabulary, and that is how we do understand a lot of text. Then listening is most important. Listening to students, listening to the experts, and listening to others. And then writing is another way that we can communicate. Okay. Information representation is one of the things. We use a lot of these tables, graphs, schemes. All these things are, for example, what I'm showing you here is a classroom lecture of 2 hours in just one graphic representation. And what I have shown you is this. And I cannot do this for a primary school students. For primary school student, the same thing has to be packaged in a totally different way. But since you understand all these terms, what is information retrieval, what is scientific reading, what is listening, scientific writing, information representation, and knowledge presentation, that is the most important that we need to understand, because these are all the first 5 are preparations for the last one. And if the last one happens, the communication in a science classroom completes. And that is why all these things as a preliminary are very important. Still, there are a few things we need to remember. Can we make every classroom as a storytelling classroom? And what I mean by storytelling is, it is not that there was a king, he had a princess, and the princess wanted to marry. No, not that kind of a story. You bring human elements into this, into whatever we teach or whatever we tell. And that makes, that brings a lot of intimacy between the listener as well as the communicator. And this intimacy is something that will help in effective communication. And therefore, it is important that we look at this thing. Non-verbal engagement, I have given you the examples. Non-verbal engagements is very, very important. And can we use them in the classroom setting, especially to you do all these E's? Then we need to understand that not all persons are good communicators. They are communicators. Some may be verbal communicators, some may be non-verbal communicators, some may be this. So if we expect that everybody is a verbal communicator, and the moment I ask a question and he will stand up and answer, it will be very difficult. It doesn't happen that way. Then can we change the evaluation or assessment methods to suit poor communicators? So this is very, I'm just opening a Pandora's box here. The assessment that we do in a classroom is, we presume that we have communicated perfectly and therefore we are assessing them. Is it certain? There are so many factors. And if we have not communicated properly, but whatever we have communicated, if the person has actually internalized that, how do we evaluate? This is one. Recently, what happened was I saw a Twitter thread. I think I shared it with the Vivek group also, where one of the higher education in the graduate students class, the teacher asked people to, write tests in any which way they want. The class was the same. It's a neurobiology class, and they could tell about what they learned in any which way, in story form, in poetry form, in drama form, and everything. And he got a lot of them together. There was a drama, there were drawings, there were beautiful paintings, and there were pictures. So almost every aspect of this. And what was he doing? He was doing two things simultaneously there. The entire learning process he was doing. He was actually asking the students to explore the environment on their own, at the same time develop the skills. So a good guru will do that. But how many of us can actually look at it and do it? And every practical class has to be trained this way. And lastly, all said and done, there is no perfect communication. So I cannot be a perfect teacher. Please let me remember, I cannot be a perfect teacher, because there is no 100% communication. There are lots of gaps in between. Like the RT-PCR is only 97% efficient, or the vaccine is only 93% efficient. With all our inputs, the communication is only that much possible. So what we can do is, if we can do a little bit of attempt or try to do these things, understand that communication is very important, try to change, probably we would be much more communicative in our classroom and outside and everywhere. So what is the responsibility of me as a teacher, what should I do? I follow only 4 principles. One is to make the children curious, then provide opportunities for learning or communicating, then organize resources which are required for them to learn on their own, and lastly, engage and become intimate, one of them. Once we do these 4 things, the learning, we don't have to teach, they start learning. That is what we say. And I have put one thing here, CCT, because Kiran is there. One of the things that is very important is in all of these communication strategies, we can now include the technology, what I am doing right now. So the technology can also be used in many ways. See, earlier, it was very difficult for us to engage a student once he is out of the class, or to become get closer to him. But now that is possible. So how we do it is, again, individualistic attempts. We can still do this and use what we call as communication technology, classroom communication technology in all these things, and engage students continuously. As I said, communication is not a one-time process. It is a continuous dynamic process, and therefore you may have to change your communication strategies every day. Lastly, I thank you, and I thank SVYM to give this opportunity to brood over a few things, to read a lot more than what I had actually prepared for. And then, of course, to talk to you all about what I feel about learning and teaching. Let me just clarify that this is not something out of my research. It is a learning that I have done through my experience in communication. And I think that these techniques, I must tell you something strange. The first class I took was when I was 36-year-old. So about 25 years ago, I had 10 sheets of paper, written down everything into that. And I stood at a workshop, talked about science communication, read out everything. I was very, 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 what should I say? I had a great stage fright. And today, if I have changed this much, and that is because I have learned the techniques of communication, how we can do that. Like one of the things that Praveen said in the beginning was, sir, can you speak a little slow? It also helped me because I have a bit of a problem in my mouth, but that's one way of getting the attention. So these are the things, the modulation of the voice, the slowness of the voice, your hands, your eyes, your eye contact is very, 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 very important. And that is one thing that gives a lot of stage fright to most of us. And teachers don't have stage fright. That is a different thing. But for a person like me, when we are communicating in public, this happens, this used to happen. So one thing I learned was, before I addressed any public gathering, more than 10 people, I used to prepare myself. How do I do that? So the anxiety has to be removed. The anxiety has to be removed. So I used to do a few things, either pick my pen, look at my watch, set it right, or if I go to a showcase and want to present them, pull the screen out. These are these are not necessary, but I used to do these small acts so that my anxiety is reduced. The second thing is, I cannot stare into people's eyes for long. That is not possible. Two things: I have a eye problem. The second thing is I get scared. So all I did was very simple: scan the audience, look at one person for a few minutes, scan, go to some other person. You don't have to look at the eyes. Scan. So next time when I take a class, if any of you are there, so please don't look at me. I will be scanning everybody. But that helped me a lot, so that to engage the people and also gauge the reactions. Gauge the reactions. I could find somebody sleeping. I could find somebody, not interested. So I will then make some comment to engage those people. And that is how I do that. I think most of these are techniques that you use, but in these can be learned. That is my point. These can be learned. If I can learn, anybody can learn. And so therefore, communication strategies are not difficult. There are some references here which I have used, and the transforming, see the on the left side, a classroom communication system for active learning. These two are basically Kiran's interest papers, very interesting papers. And then the communication correlates of teacher clarity in college classroom. So when we say that, have you understood the lesson? Which means we are asking a question whether I have clearly communicated to you. It's not whether you have clearly understood, whether I have clearly communicated to you. And that is very important. And teaching science communication skills in science studies, does it make a difference? Yes. That's a study which says yes. And my personal experience also says yes, because many of my students in MSc, for whom for the last 3 years I took science communication classes, and taught them about science communication. And they found that reading, comprehension, and then speaking will be easy. So I stop here, and now open to questions. I don't know how communicative I was, but probably.
One of the complaints in the chat box is that you are eating away time from the Q&A session.
And that is my usual problem.
So we'll have to extend, but then there are a few very interesting questions which I want to take up from the chat box.
Yeah.
I would want to start off with my own question. Having seen your work and having been associated with you for several years, I've seen you work on 4 different mediums of communication. One is writing, one is through podcasts, the other one is radio, and the fourth one is through drama. All 4 of them are not something which a teacher in a school would use every day. And all 4 of them, for someone who is a science communicator, other than writing, maybe drama or podcasts and radio are not very, should I say, the first choice media. So
Okay.
what are your experiences from that?
We have discussed this many times, but for the audience sake, the best sensation that we love is music, audio. Anything that falls on our ears is very important for us. And in language learning, audio is most important than the text. That's one of the reasons. So the way you speak, the way you hear, you pick up nuances of the languages. So if we teach that, okay, the structure of the sentence is like this 100 times, it doesn't make any impact. But if you speak those 10 sentences as a conversation, the entire thing is picked up by the communicator. So this is how we learn the language. So one of the reasons I found is that the languages that we speak in a classroom are very tough. They are not very close to the what we call as the language of the place or language of the
Colloquial language.
Mannina Matalla. So this is something very difficult, and engagement, communication require that we speak in the language of the people. And that means the language has to be as simple as possible. The next question that we ask is, can we do that with science? So if we look at the knowledge text, anything, whether it is Veda or text, science, or any other knowledge text, economics, or even you take literary criticism, they have their own vocabulary. The vocabulary can be always translated into simple language, whether it is English, or Kannada. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Science has its language. And when we speak in a simple English, what we call a simple English, the popular science, then we are translating actually from one language to another. So this is the premise that I have built, and I have been talking about this, and that is how I practice also. That's one. Second thing is there are subtle differences between the medium. Like in the text, you have a little bit of freedom to use technical words. In an audio medium, whether the audience is educated, whether the audience can comprehend complex words or not, your words have to sound simple. I cannot use mastishka every alternative sentence. It sounds very, very bad. Whereas if I use talemamsa once, if I use midulu once, if I use mastishka sometime later for the same thing, it doesn't matter. But science requires that you need to use a specific term for this. Okay, in a classroom. In a classroom. But in a setting where we are looking at communication, I think we need to have a little bit of what do I say, flexibility, and use whatever language is possible. I think I have not answered your question fully. If I have not, you can give a supplement.
Yeah, and we'll move on to the next question. Depending on the time availability, I'll come back. There's a request for a comment from your side that assumption is, the worst enemy of good communication. And generally, as teachers, we make a lot of assumptions about the audience in front of us, or their knowledge levels, or their understanding, and so on. So, your comments on that?
Definitely. See, I also do this. See, for example, if you listen to Jana Suddhi, the language that I use in Jana Suddhi is of a specific type, but that is not the Kannada that we usually speak in the routine language. Okay. And secondly, there are several things that I do in Jana Suddhi, which I don't want to say here. That those are all specific communicators experiments. But what happens is that sometime back I was in Gadag. Yes, Gadag, talking to children. So I was telling them that when we use Kavali. Kavali is the dosa stone that we use. Okay, what do you call that for in English? See, now I have a problem. This is a specific contextual word which we
I
need
think
to explain.
I think it is used just as tawa itself. TAVA.
Tawa is Hindi. It's not
But that is
English,
like,
but tawa is
no,
understood by most of the people.
yeah, it
So
is
when I
now
told
become part of Oxford Dictionary.
a tawa, when you pour oil on a hot tawa or kavali, it spreads on its own. I was explaining about the specific gravity and all. There was a blank thing, the audience was blank. The moment the audience is blank, they are staring at you. You should understand that you have not communicated well. So then I thought, where was I wrong? Okay. The wrong was probably I was not communicating to them what I was speaking about. So then I asked, what do you call this? Where the thing that you make dosa with? They said henchu. So look at this. See, if they look at a textbook, Kavali, probably they will answer Kavali mele dosa marteve. So we make dosa on Kavali. It's not a problem. But have they understood? Has that been communicated to them? Has the relation between the Kavali and the henchu that they use regularly been linked up? That's most important, because all that we do in the classroom basically is to teach is to teach about the world around us. And if it doesn't relate to the world around us, if I cannot understand that what falls from the shivalinga or the shivalinga from the patre, okay, is because of gravity, it doesn't make any sense for me to tell a lot more about the gravitational forces and all these things. Okay, that understanding also has to happen somewhere, and that is what I mean.
Ramesh has a question, sir.
So you
Don't
spoke
scare.
about communication and its importance and all that. But the one issue that I've noticed even during my student days, as well as what I interact with teachers, is that communication by its very nature, the word itself means to be to two people or two groups to be in communion. That both of them have a sahradayata, they have to have a similar kind of thing. But most often teachers talk down to children. They don't seem to think that they're having a conversation or a communication, but they are teachers. They have to teach, and the others have to.
This is
How do we
absolutely
break
necessary.
this cycle? This seems to be an issue that
You are 100%.
communication will become a problem always if that is not there.
You are 100% right. See, the relation between a teacher and or the communicators has to be the trust. Okay, the trust is always important. If there is no trust, what you receive is an order or an instruction. So the trust is most important between a child and a mother, between a child and a teacher, between a guru and a shishya. So the trust has to develop. What happens in a classroom? There are practical difficulties in managing this, and that's one of the problems that teachers face. I do understand their difficulties. The thing is, as I said, in the communication, the comprehending ability or the competency of people will also be different, and that may not be because of birth or anything. It could be because the way they grow up and all. So in a classroom, people come from so many wide in climates or environment or experiences, and when we draw a normal and build over that, the difficulty is that we will be leaving out a lot of people. And how do we reach them? In a classroom of 40, if I can communicate to 10 or 15, become closer to 10 or 15, how do I become closer to the others? And that is where I say non-verbal communication will be helping. How do we use this non-verbal communication to engage or to become closer to these people? The third thing that we can still do is see the becoming closer. Also, we can use the tools now. Earlier, it used to be the presence between the two people, not necessarily now. The communication tools are there. We can always use various tools. I have found Kiran NG, if he is there, he has used these techniques wonderfully well. He has done this wonderfully well to engage more than 200 students, teach them things that they would not even have dreamt of.
Yeah. Kiran is in the audience. I can see him.
Yeah.
Great. One more question from the chat box, sir. How important do you think gender and age are to for being a communicator or being a teacher inside a classroom?
Okay. See what Ramesh asked. So if we can practice that, the gender doesn't become a very important thing. The example can be Praveen Kumar Sayapraju. Okay. So that is not very essential. But yes, gender becomes very important when we talk about the uh, way people understand. Okay. There is a theory. There is a theory. It's not a theory. Actually, it is an understanding that the ability of a child to learn different things will be different. As soon as it is born, for example, okay, this is related to age, so I'm telling you. As soon as it is born, the child has very little of concentrating ability. Its attention will be, for every second, it will be changing, highly distracted. And after a certain period, maybe 6 months to or maybe 2 years, the it starts engaging. Okay, but then the change is it will engage with only one thing, a toy, mother, only one thing. It cannot do multitasking, not possible. This happens till maybe the pre-primary, this one. It's only after that that the multitasking. When I say multitasking, it is learning on the one side or listening on the one side, and on the other hand, watching the teacher actions. See, okay. So verbal communication and non-verbal communication, both, if it can happen simultaneously, the receiver must be having this multitasking ability. That doesn't happen in the up to maybe 5th standard or something like that. And so therefore, for those standards from the primary to this, we need to have a different skill to engage children, to keep their attention together. But after 8th standard onwards or higher standards, you cannot do that. They will be multitasking. They'll be texting here, listening to your lecture. It is not that they are not attentive. They have the ability to do both. So we need to understand as teachers in this, it is not that they are disrespecting us, but they have the ability. And if we have to keep them attentive only to this, either we have to challenge them with a little, whatever is possible, or we have to be extremely engaging. So these two are the things. And the third thing that we need to understand is the attention span of any person is not eternal. So 10 minutes you will be listening to the best lecture. After that, the attention wavers. So as a speaker, as a communicator, I also have to practice that. Yes, I give it in capsules. 10 minutes I speak, break, engage again, re-engage, then speak, break, re-engage and speak. So these are some of the techniques that we can use.
Ramesh has
One last question just before we go to close. I think one of the issues that I think is that communication as a skill is neither taught to teachers nor to children. It is something that we pick up when we become adults or get into jobs and other things. I have often felt if I had been taught how to communicate when I was a student, I may have fared better in many aspects. So, your thoughts on the fact that knowing a language seems to be the only thing that is thought of as communication in our system. So,
Exactly.
Yeah. So you just wanted your thoughts on that.
Exactly. So, see, we have been always telling, especially some of us recently have been telling that the communication in the classroom, in the college, is very important, not just for teachers, for everybody. If I cannot communicate my ideas clearly to you, it makes no sense to be in a society. And that's very important. And therefore, communication skills are important. Like I showed in the slide, there are several aspects about the communication abilities or the skills. So it starts from reading. So therefore, language gets an importance, but language is not the only thing. You need to have the reading abilities, the writing abilities, and all that. See, if you say that can one person have all these abilities, should one have all these abilities? I wouldn't say that he should have all the 4. He can have 2 as the strongest, 1 as the maybe a little bit. But it is better that one starts teaching children to first read and comprehend on their own. This is something that we have found not happening in the classrooms. And reasons I don't know. And clearly this is one. The second thing is writing abilities. So the writing abilities means if you can comprehend, understand, and communicate orally, you will also be ready to communicate in a written form. But that is not happening. The third thing maybe interfering is the language, basically the medium of instruction. So when I say communication, the communication happens against the setting of your experience. If I have not experienced this, I cannot understand. I still cannot understand what happens when the snow falls. Will it become hotter or colder? But if you tell me that it will be hotter before a rain here, it easily strikes because this we have experienced. We know it. So this is the challenge that we face in the classrooms. How do we bring those experiences, alien experiences, especially for the science teachers, align experiences, align sensations into the classroom and make it as our own.
Thank you,
sir. I
sir.
think we can go to
We
final closing
Yeah,
remarks.
we'll move towards the closing remarks. There's one more question which I would maybe add as a comment for you to add in your closing remarks is when you mentioned about aligning our own experiences, it should also be a sort of a lived experience for the teacher. It could also possibly become a lived experience for the students through hands-on experience, or it could be through observation. So how powerful do you think, or how important do you think are such experiences, whether it's through a laboratory session or something? Because a laboratory session in science education is seen as an add-on. It's not seen as a part of science education. So your comments on that, and then we can move to your closing remarks.
It's very important because when we say that, let's say, a hands-on experience, okay, I think there are two aspects to this. One is the laboratory settings that we see today, or the experiments that are designed today, are basically not the kind of learning experiences that we have. They are basically to instruct that, yes, this has happened, so do it. I have seen even in second PU classes, the practical records are copied and then presented. Practicals are not done. And why do we have practicals here? There are several things that science teaches. One is the observation. The observation need not be perfect. Okay, so we will have to test whether the observation and the inference we draw based on the observation are correct. And that is one of the reasons we do the experiments. And second thing is the learning that we have to instill in the child is that you cannot be perfect for the first time. Nobody. So it has to be an experiment done over several repetitions, and then the conclusion is drawn. That is not taught in the science classroom. So when I say learning by hand, there are two things. One is the practical knowledge. Practical knowledge, when I say, is like the skills, like maybe the I would say maybe making a motor, or maybe using a mobile. Okay, maybe your agriculture or gardening. These are skills which are practical. And for that, you have to do and learn. Otherwise, not possible. So you give a smartphone to a child, next day he will have everything. He doesn't know whether it's a smartphone or the other phone. And what are the options? Nothing. Okay, whether it is Android or Windows, no. Or how does the CPU work? No. He will not be understanding any of those things. What he understands is by doing. That is practical skill. Whereas the adding to that, to the practical skill, whatever we learn in the classroom, the theoretical knowledge will have to add to that. My favorite example for this is, we all make chapatis, we make perfect round chapatis. Okay, but the moment I ask, I have a lump of flour, maybe about 60 grams of flour, and how much thickness of chapati can we make from it? Okay, now this is the question that can be answered only if you understand the physics, geometry, and other things. Okay, a practical knowledge person will immediately make that chapati and give it to you. This is the difference. So both are important, but to understand science, understand science, it's always, because we are speaking, like I said, alien concepts which we cannot feel, which we cannot see, which we cannot touch. So these things have to be taught or learned. And that is where the classroom experience becomes important. Classroom in the sense practical.
Thank you, sir. It was a very, very thought-provoking session, and I'm sure a lot of teachers
I
would have
think the comment would be better from Satish.
Yeah, I should ask him to add his closing remarks. But before I kind of hand over to Satish sir, uh, I just would like to add, having seen Sharma sir's work and the diversity which he brings in terms of his experience, a unique thing which stands out is his interest to learn new things, constantly experiment. What started out as a small podcast has been running for 4 years. What started out as a small experiment with the science theater has been running for 2 years now. So it is the appetite to experiment, appetite to learn from that experience is what keeps on uh, keeps him going, and I think it's a big lesson for all of us. I request Satish sir to give his closing remarks and then thank everyone here.
Uh, it was a good, lucid presentation on the role of communication in learning. The problem is, as you mentioned, that communication skills are assumed. There is no formal training to anyone on communication, especially the teaching community. That's taken for granted. Even in children, for example, you talked so much about non-verbal learning. Where are the inputs for non-verbal learning in the class? Only by observing others, children pick up a few skills, and sometimes some children fail to pick it up. Very often, the non-verbal cues and the verbal cues do not match with each other. I have observed a number of classes where the intended verbal communication and the non-verbal cues used actually contradict each other. This causes a huge amount of confusion in children, and therefore communication suffers. There is no question that unless we improve our own communication as teachers, and students are also helped to improve their communication levels, children will be left with no choice other than to cram the material. So no meaning is made out of what they learn, and that's one of the banes of our education system as of now. Thank you for a very interesting presentation.
Thank you, sir. And thank you, everyone. See you all next week. Stay safe and stay at home. Thank you.
Thank you.